In February 2022, the largest land invasion in Europe since World War II began before sunrise. Russian tanks rolled across the Ukrainian border from 3 directions simultaneously. The world watched and waited for Ukraine to fall in 3 days. It did not. 4 years later, the war is still going, and Russia has lost more tanks than most countries own. But Russia is not just tanks. It is the second largest military on Earth, with weapons that can reach any corner of the planet. So strip away the nuclear arsenal. What is actually left? This is everything Russia would bring to that fight. We start with the tanks. T-90M, Russia's most advanced tank on the battlefield right now. Thick composite armor, explosive reactive armor blocks covering every surface, and a 125mm gun that fires a missile clean through another tank's armor from 2 miles away. The M variant has a new turret with better optics and a remote weapon station on top, so the commander never has to open the hatch. Ukraine has destroyed dozens of them. Russia keeps sending more. T-72, the workhorse of the Russian army. More T-72s have been built than any other tank since World War II, and Russia has thousands of them sitting in storage. Old design, upgraded electronics, explosive reactive armor added on top. Cheap enough to lose by the hundreds and still have thousands left. Ukraine has filmed so many of these burning that the turret popping off the hull became its own meme. Russia does not care. There are always more. T-80BVM, gas turbine engine that starts in Siberian cold and accelerates like a sports car. Russia fields these in its Arctic units, where diesel engines freeze and tracks crack in -40 temperatures. The same engine that made it fast also drinks fuel like nothing else on the battlefield, in a long war that becomes a serious problem. But for a fast armored thrust in winter, it has no equal. T-14 Armata, the tank Russia promised would change everything. Active protection system that shoots down incoming missiles before they hit. New unmanned turret so the crew sits safely in the hull. Digital systems decades ahead of anything else Russia fields. And almost none of them actually exist in combat numbers. Russia has been promising mass production for 10 years. Ukraine has never faced one in battle. The most advanced tank in the world that nobody has actually fought yet. That takes us to infantry fighting vehicles, BMP-3, the heaviest armed infantry fighting vehicle ever exported by Russia. 100mm gun that fires anti-tank missiles through the same barrel, 30mm autocannon, 3 machine guns, and light enough to swim across rivers. Ukrainian drone footage has shown hundreds of these burning across the front. The armor stops small arms and almost nothing heavier. But Russia builds them faster than Ukraine can destroy them. BMD-4, built specifically for Russia's airborne forces. Light enough to be dropped from a cargo plane with the crew still inside. Lands by parachute, drives off the drop zone, and starts fighting within minutes. The paratroopers who write it down call it the most terrifying thing they have ever done. Lighter armor than the BMP, but fast enough to be gone before the enemy reacts. Terminator. Tank support fighting vehicle built after Russia's disaster in Chechnya, where infantry kept climbing onto rooftops and destroying tanks with RPGs from above. The Terminator drives alongside tanks and puts 2 30mm autocannons, 4 anti-tank missiles, and 2 grenade launchers onto anything threatening from the sides and above. Built specifically to stop the weapon that kept killing Russian tanks in urban combat. Moving on to artillery. 2 S-19 Mestle S, self-propelled 152mm howitzer that has fired more shells in Ukraine than any other system on either side. Drives to a firing position, puts rounds on target, and moves before the counter-battery radar finds it. Russian crews have fired these so many times that barrels are wearing out faster than factories can replace them. The backbone of Russian fire support for 30 years. 2 S-7 Pion, the largest self-propelled gun Russia fields. 203mm barrel, long enough to throw a shell clean over the horizon. Originally designed to fire a nuclear round at NATO formations. Now firing conventional shells at Ukrainian cities from ranges so far that counter-battery fire cannot reach it. When this one speaks, entire city blocks disappear. TOS-1A Buratino, thermobaric rocket launcher that fires 24 rockets in seconds and creates a fuel-air explosion that collapses lungs, burns oxygen out of enclosed spaces, and sets everything on the surface on fire simultaneously. Designed to clear trenches and fortified positions. Ukraine has documented it being used on civilian areas, one of the most feared weapons on the entire battlefield. BM-30 Smerch. 12 rockets out of the tubes in 38 seconds, each one reaching a target 90 kilometers away. Saturates an entire grid square with fire and steel faster than anyone can take cover. Russia has fired thousands of these at Ukrainian cities. Each rocket can carry cluster munitions, mines, or a single large warhead. The sound of these launching is something Ukrainian soldiers say they never forget. Next up, missiles. Kalabar cruise missile. Russia fired these from submarines in the Caspian Sea and hit targets in Syria over 1,500 kilometers away. Flies low, hugs terrain, and arrives before radar picks it up. NATO calls it the Russian Tomahawk. Russia has fired hundreds of these at Ukrainian power stations, substations, and infrastructure. Each one costs around $1 million. Russia keeps firing them anyway. Iskander-M ballistic missile that climbs into the upper atmosphere and comes back down at Mach 7. Maneuvering warhead that can dodge missile defense systems. Accurate enough to put a warhead through a specific window from 500 kilometers away. Russia has used these to destroy Ukrainian air defense systems, command posts, and ammunition depots. The weapon NATO feared most before Ukraine proved it was not unstoppable. KH-101 cruise missile. Stealth cruise missile launched from long-range bombers flying inside Russian airspace. Low radar signature, terrain-hugging flight path, and a range of 5,500 kilometers means the bomber never has to leave Russia to hit a target anywhere in Europe. Ukraine has shot many of these down with Western air defense. Many more have gotten through. Kinzhal hypersonic missile. Russia called it unstoppable. Flies at Mach 10, maneuvers during flight, and was supposed to defeat every air defense system on Earth. Ukraine shot one down with an American Patriot battery in May 2023. Russia called that impossible too. Still one of the fastest weapons ever fired in combat, and still dangerous enough that no air defense system stops all of them. That brings us to air defense. S-400. The reason no country has declared a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Long-range surface-to-air missile system that can engage stealth aircraft, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles simultaneously from 400 kilometers away. Every NATO pilot knows that flying into S-400 coverage means flying into one of the most dangerous air defense envelopes ever built. Turkey bought one, and America kicked them out of the F-35 program over it. S-350 Vityaz. Russia's newer medium-range air defense system designed to handle the drone and cruise missile threat that the S-400 is too expensive to engage. Carries more missiles per launcher than any previous Russian system. Designed specifically for the kind of mass drone and missile attacks Russia itself has been launching at Ukraine. The irony is not lost on anyone. Panzer S-1. Short-range air defense system mounted on a truck with radar, missiles, and twin autocannons all in one vehicle. Designed to protect S-400 batteries from low-flying drones and missiles that slip under the big system's coverage. Ukraine has destroyed so many of these that Panzer wreckage has its own social media following. Russia keeps deploying them anyway because the threat they defend against never stops coming. Now we come to the aircraft. Su-57, Russia's only true stealth fighter, designed to hunt American F-22s and F-35s before they know it is there. Internal weapons bays, supercruise engines, and active radar-absorbing coating. Only a handful exist in combat numbers. Russia has been extremely careful about sending them near Ukrainian air defenses. The most advanced jet Russia has built, and the one it cannot afford to lose. Su-35S. The best conventional fighter Russia actually fields in numbers. Thrust vectoring engines that let it point its nose in any direction regardless of where it is flying. Long-range radar, long-range missiles, and enough fuel to patrol for hours. Has been dogfighting over Ukraine since 2022. Ukraine has shot several down. Russia has shot down Ukrainian jets with them. The backbone of Russian air superiority operations, Su-34, strike aircraft designed to replace the Su-24 as Russia's main ground attack jet. Two pilots sit side by side instead of tandem, with a small galley and a toilet behind them for long missions. Carries the widest variety of weapons of any Russian jet. Has been used to drop glide bombs on Ukrainian cities from inside Russian airspace where air defenses cannot reach it. The jet that made glide bombs Russia's most effective air weapon of the entire war. Tu-95 Bear, propeller-driven strategic bomber that first flew in 1952 and is still launching cruise missiles at Ukraine in 2024. 8 contra-rotating propellers make it one of the loudest aircraft ever built. NATO has been intercepting these over the Atlantic for 70 years. Russia uses them to launch Kh-101 cruise missiles from deep inside Russian airspace, the oldest combat aircraft still launching weapons in any war anywhere on Earth. And now the Navy. Admiral Kuznetsov aircraft carrier. Russia's only aircraft carrier, and it has spent more time broken down in port than at sea. Caught fire twice. Lost 2 jets because the landing cables snapped. But it carries fighter jets, and it represents Russia's claim to global naval power. Currently undergoing yet another refit that has been ongoing for years. Whether it ever deploys again in any meaningful way is a question nobody can answer. Kilo-class submarine. NATO nicknamed it the Black Hole because it is almost completely silent underwater. Diesel-electric engines make virtually no noise at all. These submarines have fired Caliber cruise missiles at targets in Syria and Ukraine and disappeared back into the sea before anyone could track them. Ukraine sank one in port with a cruise missile in 2022. The rest moved immediately. The most dangerous thing Russia has under the water. Yasen-class submarine, nuclear-powered attack submarine that carries Kalibr and Onyx cruise missiles, torpedoes, and enough firepower to threaten an entire carrier strike group, quiet enough to trail American submarines without being detected. Only a handful exist, but each one is capable of holding an entire coastline at risk from thousands of kilometers away. The submarine NATO admirals actually lose sleep over. Moskva, guided missile cruiser. In April 2022, Ukraine fired 2 Neptune anti-ship missiles at the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. The Moskva sank. 40,000 tons of guided missile cruiser carrying S-300 air defense systems, cruise missiles, and a crew of 500 sent to the bottom by a country with almost no navy. It was the largest warship sunk in combat since the Falklands War. The Black Sea Fleet has not been the same since. And finally, the drones. Shahid 136. Iran built it. Russia bought thousands of them, and then launched them at Ukrainian cities every single night. Power stations went dark. Hospitals lost electricity. Buildings collapsed. Each one cost less than $20,000. Ukraine got very good at shooting them down. Russia launched more. In a war of attrition, the side that can produce the cheapest weapon fastest has an advantage that expensive missiles cannot match. Lancet loitering munition. Russia's own kamikaze drone and far more precise than the Shahed. Flies itself to a target area, identifies the specific vehicle it was sent to destroy, and dives straight into it. Ukraine has lost artillery pieces, air defense systems, and armored vehicles to these. Russia is producing them faster than Ukraine can develop countermeasures. The drone that has quietly become one of the most effective weapons on the entire front line. All-in-10, surveillance drone that has flown more missions over Ukraine than any other Russian unmanned system. Finds the target, sends coordinates to artillery, and the shells arrive before anyone can move. Ukraine has shot down hundreds of them. Russia replaces them with parts bought through front companies bypassing sanctions. Cheap, simple, and responsible for calling in more artillery strikes than any other system Russia fields.